Alright guys, so on this episode of the Democrats getting fake outraged over things that really don't matter and things that they really have no room to talk about, we have the House currently debating whether or not to censure Representative Paul Gosar, a Republican from Arizona, who tweeted out an anime video of him defeating AOC and Joe Biden. Now, the Democrats, again, like I said, they've gotten outraged over this, right? Fake outrage. Because they're trying to argue that this is a depiction of violence against AOC and Joe Biden. Now, I want you guys to watch this news clip of what's going on so you guys get a better understanding of what our politicians are wasting our tax dollars on. Take a look.
A Republican congressman is facing a rare vote of censure for posting a cartoon video that portrays him killing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and wielding a sword against President Biden. Our congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has the latest. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning. And this is one of the most severe punishments that a member of Congress can face. In just a few hours, the House is expected to move forward with plans to formally rebuke Republican Congressman Paul Gosar. This comes just days after he shared a video on social media depicting himself killing Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and attacking President Biden. Gosar later took down that video. Sources tell us behind closed doors he tried to explain his actions to Republicans, but he has not publicly apologized, and no action has been taken against him by Republican leadership. So Democrats say they now have no choice. They say that he must be held accountable. Today, he will likely be censured and stripped from his 2 committee assignments, one that he shares with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So far, George, only 2 Republicans say they will support that resolution.
All right, guys. So as you can see there, the House is wasting our taxpayer dollars, right, on this cartoon that Paul Gosar tweeted out and then later deleted from Twitter in an act of self-censorship because the left-wing liberal media got outraged, right? Now all of a sudden they're outraged over what they perceive to be calls to violence. But I actually saw the video, the anime video, and the first thing I thought after watching the video is that Paul Gosar must be in an anime, right? He must be into anime. Okay, it would probably be interesting to talk to him about his interest in anime, right? That was my takeaway and first impression from actually watching the video. I personally did not see it as necessarily a call to violence or anything like that. It's just more of a depiction of, him and I guess, his colleagues essentially taking down the Democrats in regards to their policies. That's the way I saw it, right? But like I said, regardless, compared to what we've seen from the left, it is a nothing burger. However, AOC didn't really see it that way, as per the usual. As she likes to cry about this stuff the same way she cried about January 6th and was acting like she was in danger and all this other stuff. So, without further ado, I'm actually going to play AOC and her testimony in Congress about this, and I'm also going to play Paul Gosar's defense of his video so that you guys can get the perspective from the people that are involved in this situation. Take a look.
That these depictions are part of a larger trend of misogyny and racial misogyny, racist misogyny. This has results in dampening the participation. And so this vote is not as complex as perhaps the Republican leader would like to make folks believe. It's pretty cut and dry. Does anyone in this chamber find this behavior acceptable? Would you allow depictions of violence against women, against colleagues? Would you allow that in your home? Do you think this should happen on a school board? In a city council? In a church? And if it's not acceptable there, why should it be accepted here?
Democrat policies are so pathetic, and have done so poorly that the left has nothing else to do but troll the internet looking for ways to get offended and then try to target members and strip them of their committees. This is a dumb waste of the House's time. But since the Speaker has designated the floor to discuss members' inappropriate actions, shall we? The Jihad Squad member from Minnesota has paid her husband, and not her brother husband, the other one, over $1 million in campaign funds. This member is allowed on the Foreign Affairs Committee while praising terrorists. A Democrat chairwoman incited further violence in the streets outside of a courthouse. And then the cherry on top, my colleague and 3-month presidential candidate from California, who is on the Intelligence Committee, slept with Fang Fang, a Chinese spy. Let me say that again. A member of Congress who receives classified briefings was sleeping with the enemy. This is unacceptable, and this would never be.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Florida.
Address and reject the mischaracterization, accusations from many in this body that the cartoon from my office is dangerous or threatening. It was not, and I reject the false narrative categorically. I do not espouse violence towards anyone. I never have. It was not my purpose to make anyone upset. I voluntarily took the cartoon down, not because it was itself a threat, but because some thought it was. Out of compassion for those who generally felt offense, I self-censored. Last week, my staff posted a video depicting a policy battle regarding amnesty for tens of millions of illegal aliens. This is an enemy that speaks to young voters who are too often overlooked. Even Twitter, the left's mouthpiece, did not remove the cartoon, noting it was in the public's interest for it to remain. The cartoon directly contributes to the understanding and the discussion of the real-life battle resulting from this administration's open border policies. This body is considering passage of Mr. Biden's reckless, socialist, Marxist $4.9 trillion spending bill that provides $100 billion for amnesty to tens of millions of illegal aliens already in this country. This is what the left doesn't want the American people to know. Our country is suffering from the plague of illegal immigration. I don't stop pointing this out, nor will I. Millions of illegal aliens, drugs, and human traffickers are being led in and moved around our country in the dead of night, all condoned by this administration. For this cartoon, some in Congress suggest I should be punished. I have said decisively, there is no threat in the cartoon other than the threat to immigration poses to our country. And no threat was intended by my staff or me. The American people deserve to have their voices heard in Congress. No matter how much the left tries to quiet me, I will continue to speak out against amnesty for illegal aliens, defend the rule of law, and advance the American First agenda. If I must join
Gentleman's recognized 30 seconds.
If I must join Alexander Hamilton, the first person attempted to be censored by this House, so be it. It is done. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
All right, guys. So as you can see there, that is AOC basically claiming that Paul Gosar's anime video is a part of a larger trend of racist, sexist misogyny against her, right? Just classic AOC playing victim here. And you have Mr. Paul Gosar not apologizing and defending his tweet and his video, basically saying that it is simply a representation of the frustration that a lot of American people are experiencing in regards to the Biden administration and their policies. So, with that being said, guys, I think that AOC and the Democrats are not really in a position to be lecturing anybody about calls to political violence. Okay, as AOC last year, right after the climax of the BLM protest, essentially came out here in defense of the riots and protests. She's not really condemning them. As she said, the thing that critics of activists don't get is that they tried playing the polite language game, and all it did was make them easier to ignore. It wasn't until they made folks uncomfortable that there was traction to do anything, even if it wasn't their full demands. The whole point of protesting is to make people uncomfortable. activists that take discomfort with the status quo and advocate for concrete policy changes. Popular support often starts small and grows. To folks who complain protest demands make others uncomfortable, that's the point. Okay, so again, this is AOC essentially supporting the riots and protests that happened all last year, saying that the whole point is to make people uncomfortable, right? And how do you make people uncomfortable? You make people uncomfortable through threats of violence, which to me, AOC, in my opinion, supports when it comes to policies that she wants and things that she wants, right? But when it comes to things that she doesn't support and that she doesn't like, all of a sudden, you know, somebody tweeting a video, right, a anime video, all of a sudden that is racist, sexist, misogyny, and that must be stopped. That's too much for her. And here's my thing, guys. I told you guys, I think that political violence is a issue in this country, right? I think that both sides should be condemning that. However, the only people I've seen really condemning political violence in this country, in regards to both sides, are the Republicans, right? There's plenty of Republicans that came out and said, you know what happened on January 6th was not right, right? And they also said, well, what happened all last year was not right. AOC, the Democrats, on the other hand, they only see political violence when it comes to the other side. But yeah, they want to lecture people on political violence and waste our time on this silly tweet that really is not a call to action on really anything, right? They're just making it up. It's fake outrage to waste taxpayer dollars trying to depict the Republican Party as a party of violence, when we all know, again, they supported violence all last year. And I find it strange how AOC finds time to speak out about this, right? But she said nothing about the BLM leader, right? Hawk Newsom, who is from New York City, her city, right? Her city, calling for violence and bloodshed if Mayor-elect Eric Adams isn't tougher on crime, right? This man just flat out called for bloodshed in AOC's own city, right? A call that could affect her own constituents. And she is silent about it. She has nothing to say about it, right? But she always has something to say when it comes to a perceived threat against her. Again, I don't condone any types of threats of violence. But again, I just find it fascinating how one-sided this is and how the Democrats turn a blind eye to literally anything, right, that does not support their cause, right? AOC had nothing to say when Kathy Griffin tweeted a picture of her holding up Trump's bloody decapitated head, right? An actual Trump head, right? A picture of Trump's head, right? That, to me, in my opinion, is way worse than anything that was in Paul Gosar's video. Did AOC come out and testify against that? Did she say that, oh, you know, this isn't right, we shouldn't be endorsing this, you know, these are our colleagues, you know, Trump technically being president of the United States, a politician, being in the White House, he's technically one of her colleagues, right? Didn't have anything to say about it. Had nothing to say about it whatsoever. Silence. Crickets. Right? Crickets. And this is how it always happens, guys. Whether it's with, you know, so-called calls to political violence, even when it comes to language, right? We see how, again, all of Trump's presidency, it was F Trump, right? That was okay. That was the cool thing to say, right? AOC didn't have any problems with that. Mainstream media had no problems with that. All of a sudden, though, when the right comes up with a fun phrase to express their disapproval of Joe Biden, aka Let's Go Brandon, that is equivalent to ISIS, right? That is equivalent to a threat of violence against Joe Biden, right? Those are the takes that we've seen. But like I said, I just find it so hilarious and funny how they always do this. How they always want to focus in on political violence and how, you know, there's no decorum in politics when it comes to something that comes from the right. But when it comes from the left, again, they have nothing to say. They said nothing about Maxine Waters telling people to get into people's faces and making threats of violence if they didn't get the outcome that they wanted from the Derek Chauvin trial, right? You currently have people right now making threats of violence if they don't get what they want from the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, right? Which in my opinion is a threat to the sovereignty of our institutions, right? You have people out here actively trying to use threats of violence to influence juries. But AOC, again, is not saying anything about that, right? But the focus in Congress is not about that. It's not about what the BLM leader said, right? The calls for violence, talking about bloodshed. It's not that. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about an anime video, right? An anime video. They're wasting taxpayer dollars talking about that. But hey, you know, like I said, man, I don't want to hear anything from the left or Democrats or AOC. I don't want to hear anything from them about political violence or anything like that until they start condemning the political violence on their side. So until they start doing that, I personally don't want to hear anything from them because they have no room to talk on this issue. But unfortunately, the House is controlled by Democrats. So we have to go through this ridiculousness, this silliness over something that really is a nothing burger compared to what we've seen from Democrats. But, you know, hey, AOC is going to do what AOC does and cry victim anytime, you know, she sees something that she don't like or she gets offended by something. But it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.